you start to think about wanting to do simple testing of your brews, one of the most important and easiest to use is doing a hydrometer test. Now, I'm going to be the first to tell you, you don't need a hydrometer. You don't need to do testing. If your beer tastes great, why worry about it? But for me, as I kind of moved along through my experience in brewing, I realized I got to a point where I wanted to understand certain aspects of what was going on, such as my brewing efficiency, maybe attenuation. And all these things can be done with the basic hydrometer, including figuring out what your original gravity is, and then from that you can know what your final gravity needs to be. And of course, we can figure out what the alcohol content is too. But let's just get down to using a hydrometer, which is really quite basic. Most hydrometers need to be used at 60 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the temperature of the solution you're doing your hydrometer test. So, you're going to need a good thermometer. You're going to find you're going to use this in other places brewing also. And we're going to be getting into those in our later episodes. But now we can at least know where we are, and there are scales to adjust for temperature variations. If you can only get it to 64 degrees, there's scales that you can get that will tell you what your hydrometer change readings will be. But let's just stay with our 60 degrees. We've measured it with a good thermometer, and now we're ready to do some testing. Now, the first test that we're going to do is basically testing the original gravity of our wort as it comes out of our boil pot and going into our fermenter. So, catch a little of that as it's going out. I happen to use a flask. I caught some. Now, most of your hydrometers, when they're sold, will come with something that looks like a giant test tube with a nice platform. It's nice to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to add our beer to this container, and we're going to take a reading. Now notice, we're going to have some bubble buildup. That's got to be dealt with. But all we're going to do is take our hydrometer, set it into our test sample, take it and spin it. There we go. That helps knock off any of the bubbles that might have collected on the side of the glasses that's being inserted. And it's going to give you a truer reading. Now, I happen to know for this particular brew, I was aiming for about a 1.74 or 1.074 gravity reading. And what I ended up with was a 1.076. So now I have at least an idea of what my original gravity is. Once it's done fermenting, we can now test to see what the final gravity is. And here's a simple idea for you. If you take the original gravity, divide that by 4, your final gravity should be somewhere around what that equals. An example being, say your original gravity is 1.040. Well, if you divide that by 4, you end up with 1.010 as what you should have approximately as your final gravity. That'll give you an idea of where you're at. So let's just say you're in your fermentation period, but your bubbler has just stopped moving. Are you finished or are you stuck? Well, here's where your hydrometer can come in again as being a good test. Take a small sample, check it. If you have brewed a 1.040 batch and your hydrometer reads 1.010, well, you know you're done. If it happens to read 1.023, well, we need to wait a little longer, don't we? So wait a couple days, test the batch again. If it's still at 1.023, we know we've got a stuck fermentation and we might need to add some more yeast. So, we've come out of our fermenter and now we're going to see what our final gravity is. And we're sitting at 1.018. I'm pleased with that. So that gives you an idea of what we're going to achieve using a hydrometer. Again, you don't necessarily need one, but isn't it nice to have additional information to be able to use to make your brews easier and more intelligent? Now don't worry, none of this is going to waste. No, I don't waste the beer, I drink it. So, till next time, give the hydrometer test an idea, because you might enjoy just finding out what your brew is doing. And later down the road, we'll talk about other uses of the same simple unit.